What is astral projection and how do people learn how to do it? Is astral projection similar to things like out of body experiences and remote viewing? Is astral projection something anyone can learn and are there dangers in doing it? If so, how can you protect yourself from these dangers? What is spiritual enlightenment and how can we achieve it? Join me as spiritual coach and astral projection practitioner Cal Melkhez joins me to explore these questions and more on this episode of Passion for the Paranormal. Okay, so joining me tonight is Cal Melkhez. And Cal is a spiritual life coach and Reiki master who teaches astral projection and magic. With his background in psychology, Cal has a unique perspective on the mind and has dedicated himself to studying human consciousness. Along that pursuit, Cal has learned and taught the benefits of meditation, binaural beats, holotropic breathing, transcendental meditation, astral projection, and ritual magic. Cal is also the host of the Astral Mind podcast with over 4,000 subscribers, and his mission is to awaken people to their full potential and help them never stop adventuring. Cal, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like some interesting work you do. I have a particular interest in learning a little bit more about this astral projection. I, of course, cover all things unexplained and delve into the paranormal on this show. Obviously, it's Passion for the Paranormal. But astral projection is really one I haven't delved into yet. And I'm really looking forward to getting into that in just a minute here. But before we do that, let's step back and let's hear about your journey and how you came about, got involved in this, and how it's kind of evolved for you.
It's pretty wacky thing. I thank you for having me. By the way, it's a pleasure to be on the show. My spiritual life took on shape back when I was about 18. I had grown up in a semi-Christian household, meaning that we went to church, on the church-going days, usually Christmas, Easter, that sort of thing, and that kind of fueled my desire to learn more about the spiritual, more about God, things like that. And over time, I developed my own sort of cultivated spiritual journey. And it really started for me with hypnosis and meditation. And after a while, realizing that hypnosis was a doorway to the subconscious mind and the power that we have within us naturally, that of course led me to an expression of that power, which was lucid dreaming. And lucid dreaming is something that we all do. Everyone has done it at some point. If you don't know what lucid dreaming is, it's the process of becoming aware that you are currently in a dream. Everyone does it. And I got obsessed with lucid dreaming, being able to control dreams, communicate with my subconscious mind. And that over time led me to astral projection, which I do.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Cal. I lost your volume there for a minute. You went low, really low for a second there, and I'm not sure what happened. You were coming in just fine, and then all of a sudden the volume just went down.
Oh, sorry to hear that. How am I coming through now?
Now you sound good. Now you're
Perfect.
coming
Perfect. What's the last thing you heard?
So you were just getting into lucid dreaming and what that means, and how you kind of came about experiencing that.
Yeah. Okay. So lucid dreaming, if you don't know what that is, lucid dreaming is where you become aware that you are in a dream as you're having that dream, and you're able to control the dream, shift things, change things, communicate with your subconscious mind. It's a very powerful experience. One thing that I started to encounter as I was learning lucid dreaming was something called sleep paralysis. Now, sleep paralysis is perfectly normal. It happens every night when you go to sleep, and it's the process where the body reaches a state of paralysis that stops you from acting out your dreams. Now, sleep paralysis becomes frightening when you're technically still conscious to experience the paralysis. I started to experience a lot of this, and it caused me to start to really study, really figure this out. I was searching on forums and reading up articles and talking to people. Like, what is this? Why am I feeling these crazy sensations? And then I started to have these paranormal episodes where I would have sleep paralysis, and then I would hear banging all through the house, and things coming up the stairs, and it got so bad to where things were wrestling me at a certain point, and I was physically struggling with things. It was terrifying, but that all led me to astral projection, because I wanted to control this. I wanted to have mastery over it because it had mastery over me. This thing that was happening to me, I couldn't sleep. I was afraid. I had to take control of that. And it took 2 years of constant practice, constant searching. But I had my first astral projection experience November 18th of 2012. It's my astral projection birthday. But it was phenomenal.
Mhm.
Up until that point, everything was theoretical. Everything was just like, well, people say it works like this. People say it, you can do all of this and that. But when I finally did it, uh, it was absolutely crazy. I did a hypnosis technique before that, that night prior to the experience. And I had a bit of a bad dream, but I woke up from that dream and I was like, oh, I'm glad to be awake. It was a nightmare. I'm glad to be out of that. And I went to roll over out of bed and I was paralyzed. I couldn't move suddenly. And this was sleep paralysis. I knew this. This wasn't anything new to me. Um, but I couldn't move. And then this fear set in. But with that fear came this crazy vibration, this crazy electric shock, bed vibrating feeling that I had never felt before. It was like being on the giant drop right when it drops. It was just like this intense, paralyzing sensation. And it was so strong that as I was laying there in bed, I started to think to myself, if this continues, I'm going to die. I can't take any more of this. And right when I thought that, I felt this strange sensation of being pulled out of my bed, like my skin was a sheath, like I was a snake being peeled out of its skin. Like I felt this like electric sensation move through me, and I was on the floor, like someone had grabbed my shoulders and pulled me out of my body. At that time, I didn't know what was going on. I got up off the floor. I was laying on a bed at that time. It was just a bed and a box spring on a floor at that time. So I got up and I looked around the room and I remarked at how bluishly tinted everything was. I was like, oh, this is a little weird. Maybe I'm still waking up. And then I turned and looked at the bed and saw myself laying there. And I was like in a position that was in pain. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I got in real close to myself and I was like, oh, I actually did it. And from there I was hooked. That one experience, I remember moving through the house, kind of floating through the house, going through the neighborhood. Uh, that moment of liberation is what caused me to dive even further into this whole thing of spiritual, mystery and so on.
Yeah, and there's actually been a few movies about astral projection. I mean, of course, they're Hollywoodized, and one of them I'm thinking of is kind of a horror movie.
Ah,
Uh,
yes.
yeah, so the one I was thinking of was Insidious, and I think it's kind of along the same lines of this idea of astral projection, leaving your body, coming back. Was Now you said there was some pain involved with this experience when this happened the first time?
When it happened the first time, what I would call the vibrations or these sensations of energy moving through your body, it was so intense that it was frightening. I didn't know what was going on. It felt almost like when you're in a car and you haven't been paying attention to the road and you look up and brake lights are on in front of you and you slam on the brakes, but that impending crash sensation, that feeling of like intense like energy flowing through you, that's what I was feeling. And it was just like a continual flow of that. And I was like, I can't take this anymore. This is too much. I haven't felt that sensation often. It's a rare sensation. I feel like you get used to it, but I've only felt it of that intensity a few times in my life. It was really phenomenal stuff.
And there's a lot of talk about paralysis, sleep paralysis, and
Mhm.
how you kind of get the the paranormal side of it, where people say, I had a shadow over me, I was being pinned to the bed, and then some of the scientific sides of things say it's simply, your brain is hallucinating. You're kind of in a dream state,
Mhm.
and you'll get a lot of other people say, "Well, hey, this was real." I mean, I've experienced it. Lying in bed and something kind of creepy happened, and I chalked it up to perhaps it was kind of a hallucination. I was in a dream state, but then I kept thinking back and thought, but that felt so real.
Mhm.
That sleep paralysis. So, what say you about sleep paralysis and the how people kind of tie that into the paranormal?
Mm. When I first started having the experiences and they began to grow in frequency, like an every night sort of thing, where I was like, I've got to keep the lights on, I've got to keep the TV on, I can't sleep at night. It's happening so often. I started to look at, like these articles, look at people's videos, go through forums, and really figure out like what is this. And a lot of people would say I would see, the old hag, like an old lady at the end of my bed. I would see these static people in my room. Documentaries have been made about it. I do believe that there is a paranormal side to it, and that there's a very natural, scientifically definable side to it as well. Like it's understood that your body does go into a state of paralysis when you sleep. That is totally natural. What you experience when you are conscious during that period, because you're not supposed to be awake for that. But when you're conscious, science will write it off and say it's just a hallucination, but they would also say anything pertaining to psychedelics is a hallucination, like DMT or different things like that. When you're looking at things from a naturalistic point of view, where there is nothing outside of the norm, anything that happens that's unexplainable is a paranormal event that they would just write off as a hallucination. I've had experiences where I've seen things moving around, entities have spoken to me, I've wrestled things before. So, me personally, I would say, yes, there is the paranormal aspect to it. I believe that when your body isn't in the way and it's just your conscious awareness, you can have experiences beyond the body. That's what astral projection is. Astral projection is basically the movement of your awareness, your conscious awareness, away from this physical vessel, however that happens. I teach people all the time that astral projection is something so basic to our human makeup that we do it all the time. It's as natural as imagination, it's as natural as a daydream. Everyone has astral projected before. If you've ever for a moment zoned out and been somewhere else in your mind on a little adventure, hiking a mountain, you're at work and you're like, man, I can't wait to be kicking back with the boys, with the beers, and you're seeing it unfold in your mind. You are moving your conscious awareness away from the here and now. That's astral projection, a projection of your astral self. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, the thing that I find so intriguing about this is actually being able to see your body. So you're actually above your body, and some people, there's the near-death experience phenomena. People say they've actually, no kidding, died and come back, and they've had that experience where they've floated above their body. I mean, people they've been on the operating table, they float above their body and recall seeing, the medical staff, the doctors over their body, and they're floating above it, and they recall things that were said. I mean, is this kind of a similar thing, and is there some danger in doing this?
That's a good question. Near death experiences, when you do actually read up on them and you start to see the similarity that they all have this experience where they experience themselves moving out of their body and looking at themselves. Um, and so I would categorize a near death experience the same way I would astral projection or an out of body experience. It's the same thing. It's a liberation of your conscious mind from the confines of your physical body. Is it dangerous? Depends on what type of person you are. I like to say that any of these higher spiritual practices can be dangerous in the same way that a psychedelic could be dangerous. If you're someone who's dealing with negative thoughts, thoughts of abusing yourself, you're in constant states of fear, and you're trying to take a psychedelic, you're going to have very, very interesting experiences. They're going to be very challenging. The same thing can happen with astral projection because you're basically in the vehicle of your mind, moving through the shadows of your subconscious. And so, you need to be in a good place mentally, spiritually, physically, so on and so forth.
Now, Cal, did you have any prior to kind of having this lucid dreaming that you said kind of evolved into eventually astral projection? Did you have any paranormal experiences, anything like that at a younger age that kind of made you maybe more open to this sort of thing?
Honestly, I was a relatively normal kid. I always had a desire for that sort of thing. I always wanted to get into it, the movies I watched, but I was a normal kid. And that I feel like is one of the beauties of this thing, is that if I was, say, a kid who grew up and I was always seeing ghosts and, always talking to imaginary friends and, I always had the proclivity to the psychic, I feel like it would detach me from the normal mass of people. I feel like I'm just like you. I'm just like anybody else. I just have experience doing it. I feel like anyone can reach a place where their psychic centers, their chakra centers are activated, where they're receiving information from a paranormal place, and they're communicating with the things they want to. I feel like it's totally natural. That's my message. You know, Anybody can learn it. It's not just for the cool kids.
Yeah, and so in other words, it's not for people that I've had psychics and mediums on the show, and I often ask, is this kind of an ability like someone who has natural music ability? They can hear a note and they just have perfect tone, more or less. I mean, and they can, quickly learn to play a piano or whatever. Do you think some of this is some innate or some gifts that some people have? They're just kind of born with, and they can tap into this stuff a lot easier than other people can.
Absolutely. I feel like there are people. I've met a lot of people who just had an ability to, for instance, perceive other people's thoughts or see things that other people can't see. Tap into certain energies. There are people who naturally have those inclinations, just like someone would naturally be good at drawing or art, like you said. They have a natural ear for tone. But if you take the right classes, ear training classes, you can learn how to hear tones just the same. If you take singing lessons after a long enough time, you will have the same skill. You'll learn your range. Everyone has a skill set. Everyone has something that they're good at. People come to me and they're like, I want to be able to see, different things. I want to be able to heal people. I want to do Reiki. Everyone has a skill set. I believe everyone can do everything, but there is one thing that you do better than everyone else. There's one thing that you're put on this earth to do, and that's what I help people find. Figuring out what your skill set is, what your trump card is, your ace in the hole. For me, it's more energy. I can teach people how to activate their energy centers, feel energy for the first time, astral project, things like that. That's my lane. Finding your lane, I feel like, is the best advice I can give. I don't have anything against psychics or mediums. I love them. I have tons of friends who are able to do that. I've had experiences where I can do that, but knowing your skill set saves a lot of time.
Yeah, and you mentioned the lucid dreaming. I can honestly say that almost never occurs for me. So is that kind of the gateway or the pathway to learning this ability, is lucid dreaming?
It's one of them. One of them. I like to say that there are many ways up the mountain. A lot of people may have a problem with that, but it's a mountain. It's not a wall. There's going to be multiple ways to get around things. Lucid dreaming is one gateway. The Eastern meditation or Eastern mystics would call it dream yoga, learning to achieve a state of conscious awareness while dreaming. Um, and lucid dreaming and astral projection are so close together that I regard them as the same phenomena. And other people I know who teach this do the same thing, because when you think about the fundamentals of it, lucid dreaming, where is that happening at? When your body is asleep on the bed and you're having a dream that you're saving Princess Zelda, from whatever, you're not in your room, in your bed, in your body anymore. You're off somewhere else having a different experience. Astral projection is much the same thing. The way I describe it is, it's the same vehicle, you're just going to different destinations. I want to have a lucid dream, I'm going over here. I want to astral project, I'm going over here. You're just going to different places. What you can do if you've never had a lucid dream experience is there are definitely ways to do it that are easy to get into. But if you just can't, one thing that you can start doing is meditating and just being mindful of the moment. That'll give you the strength, the mental kung fu to start moving into astral projection and more complex workings of your psychic ability.
Yeah, and what I wanted to ask is, it seems like a lot of this is practice. I've talked to people that said, they really, before they were able to do certain things more on the spiritual side, similar to like what you're talking about, that it took like deep meditation, and before they were able to perhaps communicate with their spirit guide, whatever. I had one guy tell me it took months and months of practice doing this. So is this was that kind of the same experience for you? It was just a lot of practice and a lot of going through the motions of this before it actually happened for you?
For me, like I said, it was a 2-year journey from start to having my first astral projection experience. But what I talk about in my book, The Cure for Enlightenment, is this concept that we can't work from a place of lack. Like, the reason why certain things take so long, and yes, practice has its merits, but things of this nature take so long because you have this connotation in your mind that it should take long. Like, this is only meant for gurus who are training on a mountain somewhere in the Himalayas. No. You have all of that within you. The best gurus will tell you that everything you want exists within you. That's what I talk about in the book. You have to start from a place of, I have what I need and I'm expressing that. You don't change your external world until you've developed and changed your internal world. Now that I've gotten to a place in astral projection, I can do it more frequently, more easily. I realized that the only thing I lacked in the beginning was the confidence to know that I could do it. Just like, when someone, the first person who ran the 4-minute mile in the Olympics, after that first person did it, everyone else did it afterward. They're like, oh, it's something that can be done. Oh, I can do this. Once you build the confidence of knowing that, oh, I have what it takes within me, you can accomplish it, regardless of what the feat is, spiritual or, in the regular world. It's the same thing.
Yeah, and you also you talk about this transcendental state, going into a deep meditative state. What's kind of some things you can start to do to move towards that?
You can do lots of interesting things in that state. Moving toward that state is a matter of meditative practice, but it's interesting enough because people move in and out of states of, I would call transcendental meditation. I would also say is reaching places of enlightenment where you feel connected with everything, connected with God. I'm more than my body. I can feel everyone. These experiences that people have when they're on psychedelics, for instance, they'll say, I'm connected with everything, man. I can see everything. I'm God. They're having a spontaneous enlightenment experience. That's transcendental meditation. You're trying to transcend this physical reality, basically. The interesting thing about that is where you can get there with persistent, stubborn practice. You can also get there spontaneously on accident. And that happens to people where they're just walking down the street and the next minute, bam, they're just like, oh my gosh, I feel everything. I feel love for everything. This like unending stream of love is flowing through me. All of this is going on. It happens spontaneously. And so there must be something in the middle. It can happen to you regardless of if you're practicing or if you're not, which means that the practice and the lack of practice isn't what causes this thing to happen. It's something that already exists within you. If I could play ball as well as Michael Jordan without ever having to practice, you'd be like, well, it's just something about him. There's just something about this guy. That's exactly the point. If it can happen without practice, it's something in you. When you're trying to explore the outer realms and all these other things, you have to go within because all of that is within you. Once you develop the time in trusting in who you are inside and going deep in meditation within yourself, that's when you start to come out the other side. And now you're in these interesting realms and these interesting places. Some of the most profound times of meditation I've had have been when I've gotten quiet, I've observed the present moment, and I've just sat there. Whatever is going to happen can happen. I don't have any expectations of what's going to happen. I'm just here. I'm just present. And then I find myself somewhere else. I'm suddenly watching a movie unfold behind my closed eyes, or I'm having these waves of intense love come over me where it's just like, this is why I'm human. That's right. It's not as dangerously serious as we make it. Like this whole life thing is just a play. We're supposed to be having fun.
Yeah, and so getting back to actually the process of astral projection. Now,
Mm,
when it happens the
mm,
first time, it's obviously, you said it's shocking. As you start to do it more and more, how does it kind of unfold? I mean, are you able to kind of just travel more and more to different places? I mean, it's really, I guess for me, it's hard to get my wrap my mind around because of course I've never experienced it. It's never happened to me. Now, those sensations you get where you kind of feel like everything's in harmony,
mm.
those have happened to me, and then you kind of go, wow, where did that go?
Yeah.
It happened. It was like this, thing that happened for a moment. It's kind of a fleeting moment and it's gone. And it's like, how do I get that back? That was such a
Mm,
good feeling. But this actually, the process of going out of your body,
mm.
um, how does it kind of evolve? I mean, is it something you just keep wanting to go back to? And what are you kind of experiencing when you're doing this?
It's a very, very interesting thing. I'm going to explain to you the process. So, this is what a normal astral projection experience is like. Depending on the method, there can be different inceptions of this experience, different induction methods. But when you're actually in there and it's happening to you, what you'll notice are a few things. So, the first thing you'll start to notice, and I'll even give some tips to start because I like to be practical. I'm a man of methods. Um, let's say one day you decide to lay in your bed and you want to astral project. You're like, I can do this. Let's get this done finally. Let's do this. The first thing you're going to want to do is reach that place that sleep paralysis takes you to. You see, I got to astral projection because they were all connected. Sleep paralysis, lucid dreaming, and then that led me to this. It's like, oh, what's this new thing? You need to put your body in a place where it's no longer in the way. The reason why you're currently aware of yourself sitting where you are, staring at a screen, talking into a microphone, is because your five senses are establishing that fact for you. You're consciously aware of your five senses. The moment you are no longer aware of your five senses, you're not said to be in your physical body anymore. This is why float tanks are so interesting. They match the water to the temperature of your skin. They use salt so that you're buoyant on the water. You don't feel any contact with anything. It's dark inside the isolation tank. You can't see. Taking down the senses frees your conscious mind because now you're no longer inundated by the stimuli that's hitting you from all over the place. That's the first step you need to get to. You need to reach a place where your body is asleep and you're consciously aware. They call that the mind awake, body asleep. That's sleep paralysis. Okay. Once you reach a place like that, you usually get there through some sort of hypnotic induction, some sort of deep relaxation based meditation to get your body relaxed enough to fall asleep. Once your body's asleep and your mind is consciously aware, that's when the interesting stuff starts to happen. That's when you start to hear things, you start to see things, and that's when you can start to feel these different waves of energy, like what I described earlier. Simply removing your awareness from your physical body is like taking the filter off of life. You know, it's like taking the shades off. Like, you've got on shades outside, you take them off, bam, you're being hit by these waves of light. The energy is around you at all times. That's why I say anyone can do this stuff. You have those spontaneous moments where you're like, everything's in harmony. Like, I feel the love. I feel like I'm everything. It's happening to you all the time. The reason why it stops is because you start to analyze it. Like, why is this happening? How did I do this? And now you're starting to get critical. And now you're no longer in the moment. You're outside the moment. The present moment is where all this stuff happens. Astral projection, lucid dreaming, it's in the present. So when you get to a place where your body is no longer an obstacle to you experiencing the present moment, you feel those waves of that unity, right? This can be represented as sensations of movement, sensations of vibration, feeling your body shaking under this energy, like I felt the first time I did it. And what you want to do is stay calm through this. You may wonder, all right, well, these aren't very many steps, but if you can get your body to a place of being asleep while you're awake, all number of crazy things are going to happen because like the barriers are down. Like the only thing keeping you from experiencing the paranormal world is no longer a factor. So you're in that place, you're feeling these energies, your body is relatively at ease, which is another word for that is a trance state. I have had a lot of time with hypnosis, so I try to get people through these trance states and move them through levels of awareness. But when you get to that place, then you start working on your exits. These are techniques where you simulate movement and then your mind takes over. So if your body is no longer functioning because it's paralyzed under sleep paralysis, but you're still conscious of the physical world, if you can create a strong enough sense of movement, you will push your conscious awareness away from your body because your body is already paralyzed. You can't move it. If you've ever had sleep paralysis, you know you're not moving until it's done, until your body's like, "Oops, you're awake. Sorry about that," and shuts off the chemicals. If you can create a strong enough force of movement in your mind, then you will move your astral body away from you. And that's just your conscious awareness. Your spirit is not leaving your body unless it's a near-death experience or something like that. It's just your conscious awareness. That's the general flow of how a point A to point B astral experience happens. I hope that kind of answers some of the questions for you.
Yeah, no, I think so. And, I've heard people say that out of body experience is very similar to near death, but the way you explained it, it's more that your consciousness is moving away, not your soul. So do you have kind of this sense when you do move away and come back that you're kind of coming back into the body, though?
There is that sense because we create that sense. We want to have an experience where we're moving back into the body, and so we create that sensation of moving back in. I've had instances where I've left my body and I felt the sensation of leaving my body many, many times because I'm expecting to feel that sensation. I've had other times where I do all the steps and I'm in space. I do all the steps and I'm at a friend's house or I'm somewhere in my house. It's like, oh, okay, I did it. Great. Sometimes the methods skip what you expect to see because the method takes you to a certain position in your, astral experience. So it doesn't always have to happen like that.
Now, I'm kind of wondering if, again, I'm always interested in how these different phenomena tie in. Have you heard of the remote viewing phenomenon?
Yeah, of course,
Okay.
Fun stuff.
Are we talking about something very similar to remote viewing as you understand it? Or are we talking about something different?
No, we're talking about something right in line with that. Stanford Research Institute did a lot of research on remote viewing. I'm pretty sure they've done stuff on astral projection as well. And that's Russell Targ, I believe is his name, is the one that did a lot of research on remote viewing. When you start to look at what remote viewing is and how it's done, all you're doing is opening yourself up to receive a type of information. I want to see this. Get into the state where your body is no longer a problem for your awareness, and I want to be there, and you'll start to see it. There are techniques so simple that if you can just focus your mind on one thing for long enough, you will then liberate yourself from the body. We go through life so stressed, so pulled and stretched to every direction that we never have a moment to just be still, be at peace. We're always doing something. And that always doing something is like your mind's ability to concentrate is like a flashlight. It's like, boom, you're all over the place. What astral projection, remote viewing, what these paranormal experiences are doing is you're reaching a place where you're no longer a light, a fog light, you're a laser. You're just narrowing down your band of focus so much so that all of your mental strength is going into this. That's why meditation is so important. That's why bringing yourself from fear of the future and regret of the past into the present moment is so powerful, because you spend your energy here and there, you bring it in, then you can do anything. Gotta bring our focus in.
Yeah, that's a interesting way or kind of interesting perspective on it. What about so people in dream states, they again these lucid type dreams that people have, they believe they've talked with loved ones who've passed on and such. Is that sort of thing something you may expect to experience when doing astral projection?
Yes. Yes, I've experienced that a few times, speaking to deceased loved ones, speaking to spirit guides, things like that. Like I said, sleep paralysis, or excuse me, astral projection, lucid dreaming, they're so familiar to me that I can't distinguish a difference. They're like friends that I've had for 10 plus years. Like you can see the similarities in both of them. It's like, oh, we're the same thing. It's just different locations. Like most people have a lucid dream aren't saying to themselves, let me now go out of this dream into my surrounding neighborhood to see what's going on. They don't usually think that. They usually just enjoy whatever's happening in the dream with conscious awareness. Astral projection, you have a plan. You know what you want to do. That's really the only difference. Some people will get offended in saying that a lucid dream is astral projection because they think I'm reducing astral projection to a dream. What I'm trying to do is widen your perspective and open your mind and say, what is a dream actually? Like being aware in your dream, that's so much more powerful. We're only consciously aware of our waking reality. But to be consciously aware of the 1/3 of our lives that we're usually unaware of, that's powerful. That's where you're connected to everything. That's where your subconscious mind is connected to source consciousness or whatever you want to say. It's happening in that place where dreams happen at. It gets really, really interesting. And you have those experiences where you speak to deceased loved ones, where you start to speak to angelic entities and things like that, because you're not in the physical 3-dimensional reality anymore. You're experiencing reality from some place happening over here, you know?
Yeah, can it ever be a frightening experience?
Of course. Of course. Like swimming out in the ocean, you go too far sometimes. You're like, oh, I got to get back. I didn't expect it to be like this. The water starts lapping over your head a little bit, and you're like, oh, man.
You're like, that
Every
shoreline's
experience.
getting too far away.
Exactly. Every experience that stretches you as a person is going to give you that in over my head feeling every time you go a little bit farther. But you have to, because that's what growth feels like. Growth feels like thinking that you can touch the bottom of the pool and finding that, oh, it's a little deeper than I thought. And now you have to rush to the top. That's what growth is like. And then you realize, oh, I can handle this. No big deal. And then you go a little farther. You know, it's only dangerous because you perceive something that you've never experienced. The only thing to fear is fear itself. It's that sort of thing. I've come across things in my astral projection experience that they've had the connotation of dark, sort of, negative entities, negative experiences. Um, just because if you want to look at reality on that sort of tree of, positive tree, the Sephiroth and the Clifothic tree. I've done a lot of stuff with occult, so it's like these analogies help. You can go positive and you can go into the negative. There always has to be that balance. There has to be that duality. Um, but in most cases, most people aren't going to have something dangerous happen to them unless they're involved with something that is a bit more duplicitous in nature.
Yeah, and Cal, I've been involved in paranormal for a number of years, and I somehow this always comes up. Well, not always, but in a lot of the interviews I've done, especially when I'm talking with psychics and mediums or other people involved in the paranormal, and it's kind of this idea that your energy, uh, you as energy, we are all energy, and perhaps this idea that the energy you bring when you're in a you're in a conscious state, your everyday living, no matter what, the energy you bring can sometimes attract the same kind of energy. But how does that kind of tie into this and the practice of astral projection and the energy you bring?
Well, when you look at astral projection, just like with psychedelics, you wanna take yourself into the experience with a high expectation of positive things. Like, I'm a high vibrational being, you know. If you go into the experience dark and brooding and self-harm on the brain, and your life is something that looks bleak to you and it's depressing to you, you're going to have those experiences out of body because you're operating in a low vibrational state. So you're going to attract those sort of entities, those sort of experiences. And in a way, it's like a manifestation sort of thing. You don't receive. This is where spirituality kind of differs from science in that opposites attract. In spirituality, like attracts like. Like, you receive what you're putting out there. So if you're putting out negativity, especially when you astral project and you don't have the filter of your body, you're going to experience the full torrent of those negative things that you're pushing out. And it could be like moth to the flame. These negative entities are drawn to this low vibrational state you're in. And the way to get around that danger is just to keep yourself in a state of universal love, respect, and love for everything. Because if we're all one, any act of harm done to someone else is just done to you. I've heard it described very interestingly. A man who died, he had a near death experience. He went, saw God, had a whole experience like that. And he said, after I died, I had a full life review. Everything I had ever done to anyone, I experienced it from their point of view. And when he came back to his body, he realized you don't get away with anything. The universe is totally fair. Like, you are everyone. Thus, when you treat someone else badly, you are treating yourself badly. It's common sense when you think about it like that. It's kind of what goes around comes around, but you know, just a different
Kind
way
of
of
the
saying it.
law of karma, right? I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
eventually karma's going to come back and bite you. There's another way to say it, but I won't say it
There's
that
a
way. But
yeah, karma's something. Yeah, yeah. It's of
yes, I think you know where I was going with that.
course.
Uh, yeah, and I want to kind of talk about, how do you, so for people involved in things like, we talked about remote viewing.
Mm.
They've actually done experiments and stuff and been able to determine, through random number generators and stuff, there's something to it.
Mm.
And even the military got into research on
Mm.
remote viewing for a number of
It's the
years.
Stargate program, I think it was called, something around that. Very
Yeah, and there's there's a number of different I think programs that they were involved in, whether it was CIA or whatever. Um, the military had interest in this stuff. When it comes to astral projection, is there something you can come back to and say, this proves that this really happened?
mm.
So, again, those skeptic people are going to say, well, you're just in a dream state.
Mm.
You're experiencing hallucinations, kind of like you mentioned, the psychedelic state. What can you come back to and say? And maybe you don't need to. Some people may say, hey, I
Mm.
don't have to prove this is real to you.
Mm.
It's real to me, and I've experienced it. But is there anything you can kind of put your foot on and tell people, look, here's evidence that this is a real thing, and here's why.
Mm. I've had several such experiences. One that comes to mind is people get a hold of me through YouTube, and they find me through there, And I had one occasion where I was invited to a group of other people who astral project, which was very new to me at the time. I was like, oh, I've never been invited to a astral projecting group. And it was a very small group of people. I knew one of the members, and their goal was, what they did was they tried to astral project and meet at a certain location. Um, and me being new to the group, I always have a very skeptical, technical way of looking at things. It's like, I want to know whether you guys are actually doing it, because I know I'm doing it. And I know my friend here is doing it because I trust her. I know her. Um, and so they would meet at this place in the astral realm. And I had not been there with them. I didn't know anything about it, but I heard that they had a map of this place. One of them drew a map, and they all agreed that that's what the area looked like. Um, take this for what you will. But over I believe, two visits to this place that they were meeting, I basically worked out what the map looked like after I'd been there twice. I was like, okay, I'm in this area. I'm seeing these things. I think I know what's on the map. And I did this specifically so that I had information that I could go back and tell people, hey, this actually happens. This is a real thing. What I feel like I was doing was closer to remote viewing as it would be astral projection, but they're all just the same thing. Once you realize that they all kind of blend into each other, it's like, oh, this is just the same thing. It's a spectrum. You're just having a slightly different experience. But I experienced something where I saw a specific area, formations of rock, where they were, beachside, things like that, and I laid it out on this map that was drawn out for them. And they were like, that's exactly how we see it on the map. And they sent me the map, and it was exactly how I saw it. Situations like that, once placed in front of someone, you could say, well, that's just BS. I don't believe it, which you're totally fine to do. It doesn't make me any difference one way or the other. But it's not just me that's had the experience. There are the people you talk about with random number generators. There are people who've sat down and really said, okay, let's figure this out. And that's the whole thing with the Stanford Research Institute and their practice of remote viewing, is like, they researched it. They spent the time seeing whether or not it was practical and if they could teach it to people. And they found that even a novice, someone who had never done anything like this, could do it. All it took was the confidence to do it. Like, you show them a few simple tricks, relax your body, focus your mind. Where do you want to be? What are you sensing from that place? How does it feel? Different things like that. And they pick those things up. There are many different ways to remote view. I've seen people who've got it down to a very rigid scientific method-esque sort of thing, where they have a paper in front of them and they're like, I saw this, I did that, this sort of thing, I smelled this, it felt like this, really detailed. And other people who, I saw this image in my mind and I just wrote about it. I just drew the picture that I saw in my mind. Different ways to do it, but I think it's all connected. It's the same lucid dream, it's the same astral projection, it's the same remote viewing. You're freeing your mind from the confines of the body.
Yeah, and I'm going to go back and draw a parallel to paranormal investigating, because there's a lot of people that say you have to be extremely careful in doing that, because you never know what you're bringing out with you. You go into a location, we bring equipment, of course, with us and such. There's always this fear that something's going to attach to you, and you're going to bring it back home with you. Or some people say, I have had an attachment. I've done it for a number of years. It's never happened to me. Is there the same kind of, I know you touched on it just a little bit, but have you heard cases where people have perhaps went into astral projection and they've come out and they feel like they've brought something back with them?
I've heard about it. I've dealt with certain people, and this kind of gets into the area of magic that I do. I do a sort of ritual magic based in a Arabic sort of a Renaissance Arabic sort of style. Um, you start to learn about demonic sort of things, or what people would categorize as a demonic spirit, something negative with nefarious means for you in mind. It usually revolves around, are you going into this thing not doing something right? Are you going into a place you shouldn't go into? And if you are going into a place you shouldn't go into, are you open and shining your light like a lighthouse? Those are the elements that I see. For someone like you, if you're a paranormal investigator, you're taking equipment, EVPs, and all these other things to certain places that are supposed to be haunted. Um, Oftentimes, I've noticed that people who investigate don't have these sort of negative drawbacks because they're not open to those things. You're taking a very investigative approach, obviously, where I just want to see what happens. I'm not accepting anything or rejecting anything. I'm just there to see what I get. And that I
Right.
feel like is a very scientific, in a way, you're blocking yourself off from it. If you took a medium there, a psychic there, they would be feeling everything all up the wazoo. They would be like, oh my God, I'm hearing things, I'm seeing things, because they're open already. They're already engaging themselves in that. You know, in a way, I guess you could say it's the power of superstition, but at the same time, these powers of the mind, like remote viewing and, psychic intuition and things like that, you have to reach a place where you believe who you are, you believe what you can do. A lot of the times when I'm teaching people who want to learn from me, I teach them that their imagination is the muscle of their mind. You have to start with the imagination. When I'm able, and I've done it on occasion where I'm able to tell someone where they are, what they're looking at, and things like this in sessions with them, and they're like, "How did you do that?" You build your imagination. That's where you're like, these things happen with practice. These things happen with the development of skills. Yes, practice. Say you're practicing your basketball techniques. It's helping in two ways. It's helping your physical representation of those techniques and your mental surety that you can do the techniques. They both have to work together. So much so that there were tests done on two different control groups. One control group practiced piano, the other control group didn't practice piano physically. The control group that didn't practice, they practiced in their mind. They visualized themselves rehearsing a piano part. At the end of the experiment period, both groups came together, and the group that practiced in their mind actually performed better than the group that didn't. And so things like that show you that they have to come hand in hand. Your imagination is almost like the vehicle of your conscious experience, you know? And so I usually teach people to start with that. If you want to astral project from a conscious place where you go from sitting in this room to flying through wherever you want to go, developing your imagination, playing with your consciousness, all those other things that I talk about in the book, A Cure for Enlightenment, that's how you get there. That's where you start. And that's why mindfulness is important, because it shows you how elastic your subconscious mind is.
Yeah, I want to get into another quite intriguing, fascinating topic for me. And somehow I always get to this in other interviews where they have psychics and mediums and people in energy work, similar to what you're doing. UFOs, aliens, beings from elsewhere. Have you had experiences with them while doing these sorts of things, and kind of what's your viewpoint on them?
I've been very interested in aliens and all those paranormal things. I love that stuff. Um, I think there are two sides to it, as I do with a lot of things. I'm pretty sure there's an extra dimensional side to the alien experience and a very physical, these beings are in technology that's just far more advanced than us and they're watching us and things like that and they communicate. I believe both sides are true. Um, with the CE5 or like the contact, the disclosure movement. I love that stuff because it just makes sense. Uh, what's the name of the rocket scientist? I forget his name, but he's like disclosed all these other things about the propulsion of alien technology and so on and so forth. So I believe in those two areas.
Are you referring to Stanton Friedman? He's the one nuclear physicist that kind of broke this story on Roswell, and he passed it a couple of years ago. There was also an Israeli scientist that came out and kind of spoke out fairly recently after retiring. But there's also a lot of talk about, and I've had other guests on the show again, whether they're psychics, whether they're mediums, they say some of these ETs operate in kind of the realms you're talking about, in these higher vibrational realms, and how they communicate, perhaps,
Mm.
is on these higher levels.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like it's because there's a mixture at that point. Like when you reach a certain level, I've heard it said through channelers before that these entities can't just drop down and walk up to us and have conversations because their level of conscious awareness is so strong that they would just take us over. I believe the guy's name was Daryl Anka. He channels an entity called Bashar, and in a dream, Bashar appeared to him and said, and he asked, why can't you just appear to people on Earth and tell them like to love each other and all this other stuff? Make it easy for yourself. And in that experience, he saw the saucer come down, this entity step out of the saucer, and as it got closer, once it reached a certain distance, he lost control of himself and he was seeing reality from this entity's eyes. And the entity was like, you see, that's why we can't show up. Your people are so underdeveloped spiritually or mentally that they just can't stand in our presence. They would lose their individuality in the power of our presence. And I feel like it's partially that. The person that I was thinking of is I don't know how I forgot, but it's Bob Lazar. You probably have heard of Bob Lazar, but they came out
Oh,
with this
yes.
documentary. Yeah, Bob
Yes.
Lazar, UFOs and Flying Saucers, an amazing documentary. But he talks about his research at S4 and how these UFOs are powered by a gravitational force, element 115, and he talks about how he had this element and how the CIA came after him and all these other, it's amazing stuff like that. And where the Navy comes out saying that, yeah, these tic tac things are actually real. They're defying the way that our ships can move. That we have nothing that can match them. They're here to there in seconds. Stuff like that is like there is a physical representation of this stuff. But at the same time, people describe being abducted, they describe seeing these entities, and it's a very spiritual or extra dimensional representation as well, which means that there has to be something meeting in the middle, just expressing itself on the extremes.
Yeah, yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. And yeah, I've had a few abductees on the show, and they've talked about their experiences. And it's interesting because some people walk away from it, you know, from that they had a positive experience from it, that something was communicated to them. Others kind of have a negative takeaway from it. I mean, anybody that's kind of taken against their will, I guess it's easy to see how somebody could be frightened and have kind of a negative view of what happened to them. But it's interesting, those different perspectives, but there does seem to be a spiritual aspect of this as well, telepathic type communications, and people getting messages,
Mm.
that we're kind of heading in the wrong direction, as a whole, as humanity's kind of heading in the wrong direction. They seem to be interested in our nuclear developments and our nuclear sites and what we're doing there. So, yeah, it's one that, as you start to try and peel back the onions, the rabbit hole can kind of go pretty deep on the issue. But yeah, it's always it's interesting to get people that are involved in the work like you're in to kind of get your perspective on it. So yeah, thank you for that. Cal, we're running a little bit short on time. I wanted to. So you mentioned a book.
Yes.
Talk about your book a little bit.
The book, The Cure for Enlightenment, my inspiration for this book came from many conversations I've had with like minded spiritual people. And there's just this, it's almost like there's this sickness in people believing that enlightenment is something that's only meant for a certain type of people. You have to live on a mountaintop all your life to experience this. And, people go through life, even spiritual people, they go through life seeking and hunting and searching for this thing that in actuality they already have. Enlightenment is a state of being, it's who you are already. Enlightenment is waking up and realizing that you are this being that is interwoven into the fabric of reality. It's all one thing. You know, You can experience the love, the freedom, you can have it all in this present moment, because in reality, all that exists is the present moment. The future is not here yet. The past is gone. We're right here. And when you're right here and you're not judging the experience, you're just receiving what life gives you, just taking in what it is without offense. That's when you experience enlightenment. So The Cure for Enlightenment is a book for people who are normal, just like you and I, people who are trying to figure out why this life thing is happening, what their purpose is on this planet, and how to reach a state of lasting enlightenment. It's honestly a book for people who are like yourself, paranormal investigators, seekers who want to know if all this stuff is real. I've been doing this for over a decade. I've met people who've shown me some very crazy things that I didn't think were possible. I've done things and experienced things that I didn't think were possible. And every time those things happen, I am in a state where I believe intrinsically that I can make these things happen, that I am a part of the story that's going on. You're not a side character in your life. You're the main character. Everyone is the main character. We're all one. That's the point of the book. I encourage people to get it. I encourage people to look after it. It's not a long book. It's meant to be read in one sitting because the information it has is so life altering. When I found this information, that's when everything opened up for me. When I found that enlightenment isn't something you find, but it's something you are, that's when this spiritual thing started to rewrite itself. That's like, oh, I'm not trying to go get something. I am this thing, and I'm just going through the experience. That's why the journey is more important than the destination. Because when you reach the destination, you always think, man, it's not as good as I thought it'd be, right? And you're going on to the next adventure to find that high again. The reason why the journey is important is because you grow to realizing that you don't need the destination at all. You had it from the start. That's what it's about. So,
Interesting. Now, where can you find the book? Is it on Amazon? Where can?
Yes, it is currently on Amazon. You can get it for free on Kindle. Kindle Prime, I think, is the thing that Amazon does. You can get it for free. My whole thing is just get the message out there. Once you realize that you're not starting from a place of lack, but a place of already having the end result, like you have what you're trying to reach, it'll change so many people's lives. But yes, you can pick it up on Amazon. The book is The Cure for Enlightenment, A Guide to Spiritual Freedom by Melkhez, obviously.
All right. All right. And again, the podcast is the Astral Mind podcast. They can find you on YouTube. Website. Maybe if you could share the website with listeners, they can find.
They can find all my website information where they can get one-on-one sessions with me, consultations, coachings for astral projection if they want to learn firsthand. They can find all of that on my YouTube. I've got all the links. My website is currently under development, and the address for it is so long that you'd have to have the link, and that's on YouTube. I've got over 100 videos of spiritual content that I give for free, teaching, lessons, experience stories, all on my YouTube. So join the Astral Mind. I say to anybody listening, I'd love to have you, my Astral Mind mystics. So I'm excited to let you guys come in and see what we're all about.
All right, great. Hey, Cal, I really appreciate you joining me tonight. Great talk, great discussion, and have a great what's left of the rest of your night. And I'll get those linked up on the show notes. So the YouTube link. Yeah, thanks again for talking with me. Really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Cal. Thank you.